So, a very warm welcome to everybody. Whether you're a member or of CED, which stands for Christian Engineers and Development, or maybe you have no prior connection with CED and heard about this through Facebook, Tom. So very warm welcome to you. Whatever the case, you're very welcome. My name is Angus Armstrong. I am on the executive committee of CED, and I'm organising this season's series of Tech Talks. We've got a programme running right through to next April of a programme of talks. They're all at 7 o'clock. Apologies for those who were there at 6:30 tonight. On Thursday nights and around about this point of each month. Tonight's talk is by our chair of the non-executive committee, which oversees the governance and strategy of CED, Rob Brighouse by name. He's worked as a railway engineer for most of his career, latterly as a director of Network Rail. He's married to Barbara, who's also with us tonight, and she's a water engineer. And together they're actually a powerhouse for CED, for which we continue to be very grateful. They've got 4 children, and Rob says, sadly, none of them are civil engineers, despite their genes. He's a keen marathon runner and a Derby County supporter, which seems like it's not particularly rewarding at this time. And they now live on the edge of Dartmoor in a watermill, which they restored. And among other things, he's church warden at St. Petrock's Church in South Brent. And tonight he'll be giving us a talk, an overview on CED, with the title being CED, who we are, what we do, and how we do it. So thank you, Rob, very much for preparing and talking to us tonight. We really appreciate it. And I hope you all find the talk interesting and you enjoy it. Sit back and enjoy the ride. So I'm going to pass the hosting over to you now, Rob.
Thank you.
Make host. Yes.
Okay, so I'm the host, so I'll now share my screen and I will start.
And you will record it, yes?
Okay. Let me just check first that everyone can see that quite easily.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm doing the recording as well, am I?
Sorry, no, I've started the recording.
You started recording, so that's absolutely fine. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much, Angus, firstly, for that introduction. And thank you to all of you who've taken the trouble to join us this evening in what's probably a pretty busy week as we come up to Christmas. Probably if it weren't for Omicron, we'd all be out somewhere much more interesting, but we're all safely socially distanced as we talk together this evening. So Angus, thank you for that introduction. And one thing that was not said is that I'm a water engineer, and that's because I'm not a water engineer. As Angus said, I've worked in railways all my life. I actually joined the rail industry hate to say this now, I joined the rail industry in 1975, straight from school. I've worked on the railways in this country, in Australia, where I was involved with the Olympic infrastructure, and in Hong Kong, where I did a big upgrade. And when I came back from Hong Kong, I actually joined Chiltern Railways and eventually became the MD of Chiltern Railways before leaving to join the board of Network Rail. So Angus, let me make it very clear at the start. If there's a Q&A session tonight, it's not why was my train late and why does my ticket cost so much. That's our piece tonight, I'm afraid. But I've got to say, I was very honoured to be asked to chair the CED trustee group, and so. You might sort of be saying to yourself, why have we got this railway engineer involved in CED? And why do I personally spend a lot of my time with Christian Engineers in Development? So I will get onto that subject. And of course, as I look around the room, the virtual room, should I say, there are many other people here who give an awful lot of their time, their discretionary time to CED. And so I think it's worth sort of spending a bit of time asking why is that the case, and what is it about CED. So let me put that question up. Why are we involved in CED? I mean, what is the driving factor? And I will put to one side the fact that I'm married to Barbara, who is a water engineer and has spent a lot of time working with CED. And I think there are two things that really drive me to want to be a part of CED. And the first one I would say is the philosophy of CED, just the whole approach of CED and what it cares about. And I'll come back to that shortly. And then the second one is the outcomes that CED achieves. So some of the changes, some of the things that have been achieved, I'll get on to later. And I think it really, for me, is quite moving what the organisation does. And so, yes, I'm a railway engineer, so I suppose you could say expertise, it's important, but it's not everything. And in my case, it's obviously secondary. But I think if you care about justice and if you care about basic human rights, I would encourage anyone who's in this conversation this evening to think about being involved, because that drive for justice and human rights, for me, is a real motivator to be involved with Christian Engineers in Development. And in a moment, I will put up the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I think Ian used actually in his talk some time ago. And there are 17 subject matters in those goals, but I think everyone's muted, Angus, so I won't ask people to shout them out, but there are a number of goals that just think for a moment, what might those goals be that enable sustainable development? And I will put them up now. So there you see the 17 goals that the United Nations put forward that can actually transform our world. And I'll just pick on one or two of them, which for me are just so central to this agenda. No poverty, I think, is absolutely stares me in the face, as does zero hunger. And then going down the bottom, number 16, justice, I think, is such a strong driver. And of course, down at the bottom left, particularly for our friends in Scotland, that was a real focus, and it was a focus for the whole world with the climate action and the recent COP26 conference. And again, in my day job in railways, we're putting an awful lot of effort now into climate action and how we can minimise our footprint. But of course, the big one on that list there is, obviously in the context of this evening, is number 6, clean water and sanitation. And to me, that is an absolute fundamental element of sort of development goals, because to me, that underpins all the others. So when you talk about justice and you talk about poverty, you talk about health, in the absence of clean water and sanitation, they just don't, it just doesn't occur. I'm just going into the waiting room because there are 2 people waiting to come in. Right, I've admitted 2 people from the waiting room now, so welcome to those who've just joined us. So I was just going through the UN goals for sustainable development and making the point that clean water and sanitation is absolutely fundamental to all of those 17 goals. And that's what I want to focus on in the next few minutes, and just talk and share a few facts around clean water and sanitation. So firstly, the access to clean, safe and accessible water, that is denied to 1 in 10 people. So tonight I could pick on, let me pick on you, Angus, and pick on you, Stephen, our geologist friend. Just imagine you're the 2 people in this room that just don't have that water. You have no access to water. You wouldn't feel good about that. You would really feel that you'd been picked on, it was unfair. Well, that's what it's like for 10% of the world's population, that they feel picked on, they feel it's unfair, they do not have access to that clean water that we just take for granted. We're all familiar with Storm Arwen, at least those in the UK who are here tonight are familiar with it, that came through the UK 2 weeks ago, and actually deprived a lot of people in Northumbria of water just for a few days. And there was an outcry, you know, it was a scandal that these people could not turn the tap on and have water. But they knew it was coming back in a few days. Just imagine if that's your situation, the water's gone forever. That is an awful situation. We take this for granted, don't we? We can turn on the tap, we can clean our teeth, we can go to the toilet. Many people in this world, they have to walk more than 5 miles just to get some water. And that water is then not necessarily clean. Animals may have defecated in it. It's just not what they get in the society in which they live. And so they have to fetch that water, and it's like carrying a bag of heavy cement on your head. And imagine carrying a 25 kilogram bag of cement for sort of 5 miles, and you've probably not got good footwear, you're walking over rough terrain. You might be a school child, so you're missing school to fetch that water. Or you might be a mother who can't be at home looking after her children, her young children. Or even worse, you might be a teenage girl, and girls get attacked and girls get raped while they're going to fetch water. It's a real massive issue in this world. Every 90 seconds, a child will die of water-related illness. So just quickly look at my watch now. Since we started this evening together, probably about 15 or 20 children have died as a result of unclean water. Just think about that for a moment. 20 children, 20 sets of grieving parents whose child has literally died while we've been having this conversation. And that's equivalent to one of those aeroplanes there crashing every 2 hours. So if you cast your mind back to October 18, March 19, you recall the 737 MAX plane crashes. It was all over our TV screens. It was all over the newspapers. It was an absolute scandal that 2 of those planes had gone down, killing 2 plane loads of people. So why is there nothing in the media about the plane that crashes every 2 hours, to take my parallel, of people dying through the lack of clean water? Today in the UK and throughout the world, we have the Omicron version of coronavirus. In the UK, 8% of hospital beds are now filled with people who have coronavirus. Throughout the world, 50% of beds are filled with people who are sick because there is not clean water for them. 50%, and we look on our 8% as a real crisis. So put that into context. And in developing countries, 80% of all illnesses result from problems with water and sanitation. So 80% of the people who are ill because they don't have access to the clean water that many of us enjoy in the UK. And very sadly, of one in 5 deaths of the under 5 is related to water-related disease, sorry. So these are people who haven't got access to clean water, under 5, who are dying because they don't have that water available. So hopefully that will encourage you, whether you're an engineer or not an engineer, whether you're a water engineer or a different sort of engineer, to think about being involved either as a member or a supporter of Christian engineers in development. And what I would say, and I can say this because I am a railway engineer, not a water engineer, we can all contribute actively. We can all be involved. We could do it with our money, we could do it with our prayers, we can do it with our skills. And those skills, they may be water engineering, it could be general engineering like myself, it could be project management, it could be administration. Don't overlook the importance of good administration to a charity like ours. It could be agriculture, It could be a speaker. All of us are able to go and speak to our local churches and community groups. It could be finance. And if you're living in a developing country listening to this talk, you could actually, with the support of CED, think about how you can improve the quality of life for your local community or adjacent communities. So how could you be active with CED such that we and you can actually improve the life of people who live in that region and actually start to address some of these horrific figures that I've just talked about. So I've done the why. Let me talk about the who and the what of CED. CED was formed 37 years ago at the start of 1985. So the gentleman who was the key driving force at the time was Peter Stern. Peter had a vision for what we could do with our engineering skills, and Peter's legacy still lives on beyond Peter himself. Here's our first two newsletters at the top there. You'll see the newsletter has moved on. So I think Ian is on the call. So Ian, you can see your work on graphics and presentation has caused a bit of a step change since 1985, where we look at newsletter number 1 at the top there and newsletter number 2. And the gentleman on this newsletter, number 99, is Peter Stern. And this was a tribute to Peter when he passed away. But what Peter did back in 1985, he assembled a group of Christian men, and I do say Christian men because it was very much men at that point. And the point that was raised earlier about diversity is by Edward is very relevant because we must make sure it is not just men. But these were Christian men who had careers overseas, and they worked in developing countries. And they had a vision, and they had a desire, and they had an energy to improve people's lives. And they particularly focused on the rural communities. And since that vision took off back in 1985, CED has worked in many, many countries in East Africa, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Kenya, Rwanda, in the DRC. And it's also worked beyond Africa. And one of our members has lived in Pakistan for the last 6 or 7 years, working there. So what that demonstrates is what a small group of dedicated people with a common goal can achieve, and they can achieve great things. So in 37 years, tens of thousands of people now live a richer lifestyle, because their basic needs have been met through projects that have been initiated and supported by Christian Engineers in Development. And the fundamental change that has brought, along with the water and the sanitation, has brought health, it's brought education, and it's brought work. And I think one of the beautiful things about CED is we have members who go back to the 1980s and the 1990s. We've got, dare I mention you, Malcolm, we've got people like you who have just joined, and we and you and they can all make equally important contributions to CED. So there's no seniority, there's no rank. People come with new skills, and the organisation grows and flourishes because new people join with people who've been there for some time. So after that 37 years, as we approach 2022, what does CED look like, and what is CED? And before I say what CED is, I'll just spend a minute saying what CED is not. So firstly, it's not huge. The famous Schumacher book, Small is Beautiful, that applies. We are relatively small. We are focused. We have a membership of about 80 people, and we are tending to focus on smaller projects. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. So we're not a huge organisation. We are not an advocacy organisation at this stage. So some great organisations out there like Water Aid and Tear Fund, and what we do is very complementary to the work that they do. But we are not renowned for being an advocacy organisation. We are not a disaster relief organisation, and many of you will have heard of the Register of Engineers for Disaster Relief. Our mission is long-term sustainable change through local communities. REDR do a very important job. They do short notice interventions where there have been natural or man-made disasters, but that is not CED. We are not a disaster relief organisation. And the final thing we are not, which I think is probably the most important, is we are not exclusive. The beneficiaries of CED work come from every race and tribe, every belief. They may be Christian, they may be Muslim, they may be Hindu, they may have no faith at all. But that said, CED works with, it's very inclusive and works with people who can benefit from what we do. Having said that, I would say most of us are motivated by the summary Jesus gave of the 10 Commandments. And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, I emphasize mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. And I think the vast majority of CED members are motivated to use their minds and to love their neighbours. And that's what drives us to do the work with CED. So I've said what we're not, let me say what we are. Almost by definition, I said we're not huge, we are small and focused. We have 80 members. We have 55 supporters, and I'll explain the difference. The supporters are made up of individuals and organisations. We have 40 individuals and we have 15 organisations. So the members are engineers, they are other professionals, they are people who use their skills in the UK and overseas and on a wide range of projects. The supporters are equally important. They help to underpin our projects. They do what it says on the tin. They support us. And so they are an equally important group of people. Every year we meet around an AGM. It's a great opportunity. Like-minded people come together. We discuss some of the issues we've touched on this evening. We discuss the engineering that can go into fixing some of these issues, and we learn from one another. Locally, we have smaller groups. We generally meet in person on a geographical basis, but like the rest of the world, everything's been by Zoom for the last couple of years. We share expertise, we support one another, and we develop ideas. So Barbara and I were both members of the London group because I spend a lot of time in London anyway. And recently, not recently, over the last few years, we've looked at the work that Nigel of CED has done on the self-backwashing water filter, and we've seen that through all the way from a trial to a prototype at the South Bank University, and it's now working successfully in the field. So we remain small and focused. We are built around partnerships, and our success rate, which is high, is because we tend not to dive in and rush out. We build partnerships with local churches of all denominations. They generally have development officers who work with us. We work with local government water departments, and absolutely critically, we work with the communities that will benefit from the work. And all the schemes I've seen, the communities have been involved in the building, the management and the maintenance of those projects. And by being involved, particularly in the management and the maintenance, of course, that creates sustainability. Increasingly, and I think this applies to many charities now, we are an enabler, not a doer. And it's been well proven that the best outcomes result when charities like ours enable and support communities rather than just breathe in and do it. If I just quote now from the Water Aid website, it says, fragmentation and efficiency occur when sources of aid do not collaborate. Too often money is channeled into short-term projects that are not part of a common plan or bypass country processes and systems that are essential for financing, implementing and monitoring water and sanitation services in the long term. This slows down progress and undermines sustainability. So WaterAid share this philosophy that we have, that we're not there to come in independently and do things on our own, but we actually work with our partners because that produces the best outcomes. And then the final thing I'd say, we are very cost effective. In my work, we talk about pounds in the ground on projects. And I think, again, the same applies with Christian Engineers in Development. Our overheads are pretty close to 0%. The directors and the UK members all give their time for free. We use community labour to implement projects and manage them. We minimise the number of flights to go and visit projects and do what is needed for scoping and setting up and governance and management, but we are not flying backwards and forwards all the time to these projects. And as a result, the vast majority of the money goes into the infrastructure that will deliver the benefits. That's all well in theory. I'll now share with you a couple of examples of projects where this has been applied. I'm going to talk about one large one that I visited a few years ago, and then I'll talk about a smaller one, which is very typical of CED enabling local initiatives. So I will start with Pawaga. This was a major project and initiated by John Holloway, who again was one of the people right at the start of the project of CED, and I think probably a pinnacle of John's career actually. You there see our member Rob, who is there with the local surveyor. You can see Rob on the screen, he's with us this evening. And Rob is a member of the exec team at CED and has a really deep knowledge of both this project and other projects. And Rob, I think you were on site sort of 2 or 3 years, sort of living on site. Give me a nod if I got that right. Or yeah. So Rob actually lived out there because this was a very big and complex project, and we needed someone on the ground. And if you look at that hut in the background on the right, that's probably about the quality of accommodation that Rob got to live in. I remember going to see him, and it wasn't the most salubrious accommodation for poor old Rob, but he did a great job. He connected really well with the community and had a major impact on the success of that project. So just to talk about the project, it was exceptional by our standards. It was a 1.2 million euros project. I say euros because we got a big grant from the EU to cover the cost. We benefited over 20,000 people, like the children you see on this. And it was done in partnership with the Anglican Church in Iringa in Tanzania. And we had the Archbishop of Tanzania was actually the local bishop, Bishop Donald, and there was a development officer by the name of Christine Kalipamwamba. And Christine was one of those people that if she said jumped, you jumped twice in the high. She was a real force for good, and she really helped us, did she not, Rob, to sort of get things moving over there and galvanise the communities. We worked in conjunction with the local water authorities. So it was a real collaboration of CED with the local forces for good to deliver this very large project indeed. And there you see Rob looking at one of the intakes. It was a gravity fed system. And so the beautiful thing about gravity, of course, is it tends to work 24/7 all the time, rarely fails. One thing that was so important over there was the water committees. Barbara and I met with the Water Committee while we were there. We talked about diversity. We managed to get one woman I can see on the Water Committee, not Barbara, I hasten to add, but the woman next to her. And I think she was probably a bit embarrassed, actually, that we made her stand at the front, because that was a bit countercultural for her to step forward and to be at the front of the photograph. But the role of the Water Committee was literally to make sure that the benefits flowed all the way down the pipeline. And so they were there to make sure things were managed in an equitable way, to make sure it was sustainable. And it would be less than honest of me to say it was all simple. There were a number of difficulties that poor old Rob had to grapple with and the rest of the team. There were engineering difficulties, there were finance difficulties, and there were ongoing management issues. Material prices increased and exchange rates moved against us during the life of the project. And at one point at CED, it really was a bit of a white knuckle ride, really. And the board had to look really hard at the contingency and make sure that we managed the money really, really well to keep us in business. Archbishop Donald moved on, as did Christine. And so, again, it brought home to us the importance of those partners, because life got a lot more difficult once we lost Donald and Christine. But at the end of it, we brought in 2 CED members. And again, here's another lead for anyone who's thinking of membership. Hugh and Tricia, they are doctors, and they came out and did audits for us. They did an audit at the start, they did an audit at the finish to establish the amazing health benefit that resulted from the project. And not only did that help us see how successful and important the work was, but it also, of course, met the criteria for the EU so that they could sign off the grant. But as I said, there were difficulties. On the follow-up issue, on the follow-up visit, we found evidence of corruption in the management committee. So those who lived nearer the source were actually taking more than their fair share of water. And so it meant those that lived at the far end of the pipeline were not getting the uninterrupted supply of water that the system had been designed to deliver. And because of that, you can see that some of the equipment wasn't being properly looked after by the community. And why would you if you're not actually getting water out of it? So there were issues we had to address. We had to go and see the local government to make sure that they were sort of managing the system better. And again, the issue of sustainability is so important, and those water committees and the good governance of those committees is so important to ensure that the scheme continues to deliver the outcomes we're after. But overall, it was a huge success. Apologies to Barbara that I keep putting her on the photographs, but she was there, so she got on them. But you can see there, there's not a picture of water here. There's let me just admit someone. Nigel, welcome midstream. What you see there is a bunch of children who are on the way to school, looking happy, looking healthy. And the key thing is, of course, that they can spend their time going to school and gaining a good education. There are clinics nearby to look after them. And it's all because there is water and sanitation that allows them to live a higher quality life. And so again, walking around, the thing that really struck me in this community was the number of happy, lively, bubbly children who could actually start enjoying life and being educated well because of the water and the sanitation. So let me now wind the clock forward a bit. I want to talk about a more recent project, no less significant, or perhaps even more significant when we think through the ramifications, but it's the classic example of CED involved in an enabling project. And we've got Ian on the call, I think. So Ian, can I apologise to you, because you could explain this far better than me, but I will touch on it. Kagera, if anybody wants to hear the real story about this, go onto our website. And in November 2020, Ian gave a talk on this, which will give you so much more detail. But it's a classic. It's a classic example of working in partnership, working with local community, and actually producing a much wider benefit than the initial project itself. And in essence, it is a project to produce tanks of 1,000 or 5,000 litres for local communities. Ian, I think you left us and joined us, so I'll just apologise that I can't present this quite as well as you, but I'm doing my best, and I've referred people back to your November 2020 talk. And the beauty of this scheme is that it's very local to the communities. It doesn't totally eliminate the need to go and fetch water in the dry season, but it goes a long way to reducing that burden on the communities. And for much of the year, they have adequate water to live their lives in the way that they would wish. This was not a high-tech project, as this picture shows. It was definitely not us pushing the frontiers of technology, but the real beauty of this project is this. The group of people building these tanks were trainees, and over the time of doing the work, they moved from being trainees to trainers. And so the people of Kagera, after they completed this project, they then travelled hundreds of kilometres across Tanzania to a place called Pande, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, and they taught others. And this is, to me, this is the ultimate in sustainable development. So what we now have is a self-perpetuating cycle of people learning how to do simple technology, getting the health and benefits of having that technology, but then sharing it with others and teaching others. And what you now have is a virtual circle where people can go on and teach others. And that, to me, this is the ultimate in sustainable development in that country. And I can only just imagine the sense of worth and the sense of self-esteem that these people you see here must feel, that they can actually not only get that water, but actually contribute to the life of others. So I'm just going to remove the slides just for a moment and raise a couple of questions. Okay, so can we all see each other again? Yes, good. So I'd like to raise a couple of questions. Firstly,
could I just interject?
I contribute to...
Sorry, Rob. If people are uncomfortable with their video, bearing in mind it's a recording that's going public, feel free to switch your videos off, and you can leave your mics on. But if you're uncomfortable with being recorded, then just switch off your videos.
They're all a good-looking bunch, Angus, so they should be all right. Yeah, so I'd like to, in the context of what I've just covered, is raise a couple of questions. And the first one is to ask yourself, how can I contribute to CED? And what I would say is this: if I can, then you can. If you're an engineer, an architect, an agriculturist, a project manager, a health worker, any of those skills and other skills, then you could bring those to the organisation as a member. And to become a member, you just go on the website. It is not an onerous process, and I'm sure we would be very pleased to welcome new people as members. And what I should say this evening, I focus very much on water, but CED is much wider than water, and it actually reflects the skill base of our members. And so if you can do it and the community needs it, then there's a good chance that it's in the scope of what CED can do. So don't let me narrow your thinking purely to water and sanitation. If there are things that will benefit communities in developing countries that are economically sustainable, then that's part of the agenda. I'm going to pick out a particular individual, and I do apologise because I've mentioned him before, but Ian is an architect, And it's Ian who's led that work on the water tanks, the cement ferrous tanks. But in the past, Ian has done design work for schools. He's done design work associated with Zanzibar Cathedral. And that the work at Zanzibar has actually spawned a great centre for reconciliation. And I think that's, Angus, if you're looking for ideas for 2022, that's a talk in itself, the work that Ian has done there. But there's also work on agriculture, on land use, on power schemes, and many others. So I think the only limit to how people can contribute to supporting developing communities is your own imagination. So do think outside the box. If on the off chance your skills don't fit that profile, then you're equally welcome to become a supporter. And as I said earlier, supporters can be individuals or churches. And I would encourage you, if you're a member of a church, to get your church to be a supporter of CED and start taking an interest in the work we're doing and get to hear about some of the fantastic developments that go on. And if you are a member, motivate your church and maybe get them interested again as a supporter and possibly offer to give a talk to your church. At the very worst, it will give your vicar a day off. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity to appear before a gathering of Christians in a church and just talk about the work that is being done. And of course, if appropriate, include CED in your charitable giving or in your legacy giving. So that's how can I contribute to CED? My second question is, how can CED support me? And I'm really addressing that to people on this call and who are watching the video, who come from rural communities in developing countries. And perhaps you're part of a church in one of those communities. So again, think, how can I help my local community to prosper and develop? And how can I engage with CED to make that happen? So if you can, come along with clearly stated needs of what's needed in that community, and come along with the support of your local community and their willingness to contribute either to the construction or the operation or both, please do come with those ideas, and CED would be a good place to come and have that conversation. So in conclusion, my view, going back to where I started, is that the work of CED changes lives for the better. And I think that is probably the best one line that I can think of to describe what CED does. And I want to leave you one example that was from my first trip out to Tanzania in 2009, when we were asked to do an evaluation of a project called Kilolo. And it was a very interesting experience for me. It's the first time I've been to Tanzania, first time I've been to Africa, actually. And I traveled around a few villages with Barbara that were looking to have schemes done and assessing whether it was feasible. But then we went to Kilolo, where a scheme had been completed, and something struck me. Firstly, what struck me was that people were growing flowers outside their houses. And it just doesn't sound big, does it? But actually, people were doing things for pleasure because they wanted to, not because they had to survive. And for me, that was very, very powerful. Secondly, I saw a bunch of young boys playing football. And I suddenly thought, hang on, I've not seen this before. Why weren't they playing football elsewhere? Was it because they were busy fetching water? Was it because they were ill because of unclean water? Or was it just because they had no energy left to do fun things? Because it's tough living in a village with no water and no sanitation. And then I saw a teacher at the school, and he had a conversation with me, and a couple of things came out. Firstly, he said, it's good to be here because the kids can come to school. The kids are well, they're available. But also, of course, as a teacher, I'm happy to live here because there's water and there's sanitation. So the knock-on effects of the water were huge. But having said that, I think my words are irrelevant alongside what one of the villagers said. And I will again put this up for you. The water project has brought some kind of revolution. The life we live is now very different from the life we used to live. And to me, that is the word of a local who was at the end of one of the CED projects. And so on that note, I make no apologies for delivering what is probably the most non-tech tech talk so far. But can I finish by encouraging you, whether a member, a supporter, or someone in a developing country, to support CED, and actually you yourself with support from CED can be a real change agent. So let me say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join this call this evening. Thank you to those many people on this call who give so much of their time for the good of people who live in the developing countries. But most important, on behalf of these children and others, thank you. You have changed lives for the better. Thank you very much. Angus, shall I stop recording now and hand over back to you? You're muted, sorry.
So I have reclaimed hosting privileges. And we were going to record any questions and answers because that could be helpful. So Rob, thank you very much. I gave you a title for the talk, and you've addressed it all, and you've done it very well. I had every confidence that you would, but you have, and so thank you very much. You. And it is great. Yes, you are an engineer, but as you say, you know, CED is not about building railways, but you have that sort of breadth of experience in business and in life, and you're able to bring that to bear, and that's tremendously valuable. And I think that's, as Rob's been saying, that's something for everybody. You know, well, I can see the two people in the middle of my screen. One is a ship engineer, and the other's an aeronautical, or for things that go up in the sky. Ian Ferguson, my pal and mountaineering and skiing friend. Really pleased to see you here, Ian. You know, we might not be going to build airplanes or ships, but you never know. We might be able to contribute. And the needs of CED as an organisation are broader than engineering. Again, as Rob has said, we right now, and I don't think we've got any accountants in front of us with us tonight, but our accountant chap, Bill Harper, has done a tremendous job for many years, but he's backing out, so we're looking for accountants. We have admin roles and all the rest of it. But that's enough of a plug. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to raise? You're welcome to unmute yourselves, or you're welcome to do it by chat.
Yeah, I'd just like to raise a quick question. I do have to go in about 5 minutes as well. I'm being thrown out of this coffee shop, so I'll keep this very brief. But thank you very much, Rob, for what you've shared with us tonight. And I can see that, especially towards the end there, I got the feeling that what this work means really means something to you as well. Especially when you were talking about the kids playing football there and the change in people's lives. I really felt that. So thank you. The only question I've got sort of at the moment really is what's the kind of the big idea for next year? We're coming towards the end of 21. So what's the plan for next year? What's coming up?
Yeah, I think well, firstly, thanks for your comments. And I think what's important at the moment is the context of the world and COVID, and you've seen about the British approach to foreign aid, which is disappointing. But actually, I think the move towards enabling it, to my mind, is the big thing. I shared the Pawaga project, which to my mind is a one-off, and I think the whole process of being an organisation like ours is actually working alongside rather than doing to. And I think as a board and as an exec, that's what we've really got to be thinking about. How can we actually work alongside people? And so that project I shared on the cement tanks, that's a classic example of how you can get involved in the community, help and support. But actually what you then do, you spawn something really tremendous because it can grow and grow. So to me, that is probably one of the key thrusts for next year. And then something we talked about at the start, I think, is the whole issue of diversity. Engineering has been the domain of sort of white middle-aged men like myself, unfortunately. And I think what we've got to do is find a way to just appeal to a much wider base. There's an awful lot of talent out there. There's talent in this country, there's talent overseas. I noticed that we were joined by Philip from Uganda, who's doing a great job for us out in Uganda, supporting some of the work we do. So hello, Philip, good you're here. And I think it's really important we really put the effort to work alongside people from a much wider geography and a much wider sort of base of ethnicity and obviously men and women alike.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, my apologies, but I'll have to drop off now.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Tom. Thanks for coming.
Nice to meet you. And you'll post the recording on the Facebook page with you, or?
That's on the website. On the website.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
For joining us. Just adding to what Rob said there in response to the question, we have a range of ongoing projects, and the ones that spring to mind. Well, Rob Wakeling, would you like to address that, because you're more direct, you are directly involved?
Do you mean the question I've just posted or the one you're raising?
Well, I was wondering if you'd like to mention ongoing projects and specifically the hydro work.
Well, yes, I'm involved in a small pico hydro scheme in the DR Congo, which is being designed by our engineer, Jonathan Cox, who has a long experience in designing hydro schemes, and he's been working on hydro schemes for hospitals in Uganda over the last few years. And another of our members, Graham Miller, has now been helping on the electrical engineering of the project. It's quite a challenging project because it's a very remote hospital in a part of the DR Congo, which is quite inaccessible. It's got a long access road from Lubumbashi, which is about 600 kilometers, which is only passable about 1 month in the year towards the end of the dry season. And at the moment, we are just ordering equipment for that to refurbish the hydro scheme. It was first installed about 30 years ago. It's done a very good job, but now it's broken down, and it needs the turbine to be replaced, and it needs to actually be upgraded slightly by building the powerhouse a little bit bigger and renewing some of the distribution network around the hospital, because they're expanding the hospital as well. It's a hospital that serves a very wide area, but people come there from about a 200-kilometer radius, and it's doing a vital work in a very remote part of DR Congo. What more should I say?
Yep, no, that's lovely. Thank you. Barbara, not wanting to put you on the spot, but would you like, I don't know if you have access to it, have you access to your previous set of minutes? And I thought you could just quickly really skim through the range of projects that we've got on. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that.
Actually, yeah. Rob, you carry on.
I literally came out of the board meeting a couple of hours ago, so with a bit of luck, Angus, I've got that in front of me.
Oh well, that would be good, because just to skim through it, because not everyone's perhaps. Oh.
Right, you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
So Tanzania, rainwater harvesting with Ian, that I mentioned it. Uganda, Kagera Hospital, which is a hydro scheme. Uganda, another hospital, a water supply. Uganda, hydro refurbishment. A school in Kampala. Rwanda, a community water supply. Sierra Leone, Manoa water supply. Pakistan in rural villages. And India, a borehole. And actually on one of those, we've got Philip on the call. I think, Philip, you've been involved in one of those Ugandan ones, haven't you, supporting us on the ground? Perhaps Philip can't hear us, actually.
I think he's muted just now.
Right. So Angus, sorry, in answer to your question. Oh, there's Philip now.
Oh, yes, I have.
He's come and gone. Philip, you're there. Sorry, I won't keep putting Philip on the spot in that case. So Philip is involved. I think Philip's involved in the project, the mini power supply project in Kaluva. Barbara, is that right?
I think Philip's also involved at Kagera Hospital.
Correct. Sorry, yeah, I was looking for that one. Yeah. So Angus, sorry, I just rattled off the list quite quickly there, but that's a list of about 12 different projects in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different countries at the moment that are all active.
That's great, and shows a little bit of our diversity in terms of water projects, hydro projects, and so on. We have been involved in other things as well. There was the Zanzibar Cathedral, which was quite a major structural project. I think that was €1 million or so. But yeah, quite diverse. Nigel, you were going to say something. You're muted just now.
Yeah, thanks, Angus, and thanks, Rob, for that talk. Apologies for missing a bit of it. I seem to lose the Zoom link for some reason. But anyway, I shall look at the recording. But I was going to just ask whether there was any way CED would want to share some of the lessons, particularly on those very replicable systems, such as the concrete tanks, with other NGOs or charities to spread the word more widely, because that seems such a good technology that would benefit, a lot of other places. So I just wondered if there was any way that could be done, if that was desirable, really.
I don't see any issue with it. We also have this wonderful backwash water filter, don't we? That is a marvelous invention, and I guess that can be shared as well.
I think Ian should answer the one about the tanks.
Yeah, I was going to put him on the spot. So Ian, do you want to share your thoughts on Nigel's question?
Yes, I think it would be a very good thing. I have on my to-do list for the Tanzania or the Overseas Tanzania group to give them a little update on the tanks. But the problem is I haven't got around to it yet, so it really does need to get to the top of my agenda. So I've got a couple of that kind of thing to do, and we also have a couple of groups waiting to start, and a little bit encouraging people to take the initiative and continue their own training, and persuading people that yes, you have had your training, you can do it now, so get on with it.
Yeah.
And again, just trying to get people to buy into the whole thing, that it is challenging unless there's a big subsidy, and there is no big subsidy that we're offering, because when the subsidy stops, the work stops.
Thank you.
So Nigel, when you dropped off the call, I did share with everyone the work of the London group and the way that we saw your backwash water filter go from a concept to a prototype at the South Bank University to on the ground. and the power of sort of sharing that information and applying it.
Thank you, Rob. In fact, I think the next Tech Talk is on that. So,
oh, there you go. There's a trailer. So yeah,
very good trailer there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that in here, but
that is.
I was wanting to do that. So Nigel here is sort of inventor and developer of the Clary Wash system, and he is speaking on the 20th of January. Same time, same day of the week. I just want to feed into us here. I've got a note here from Philip. He's saying apologies, he's got a poor connection at his end, but he's involved with the water supply at Kagera Hospital in Western Uganda. And he also did a construction audit for Kaluva Hospital in Northern Uganda. And there's also a hydro refurbishment at Kaluva Hospital. So Philip's doing a range of work for us on a range of projects there, and to have someone in country to cover that work is just fantastic. It's lovely to see Ian and his wife. Now, I'm afraid to say it because I'm afraid I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong. Hi. It's the first time I've seen a picture of you live. So Ian, you're going to have to tell me the name, how to pronounce the name correctly before I embarrass myself.
Right, this is Nazia, my wife.
Nazia,
Yeah.
lovely to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for joining us.
You're muted again.
Oh, should I mute? Yeah.
No.
Mhm.
Well, if there are no more questions for us, then we'll probably draw things to a close.
Robert, a question in the chat then?
No.
Just funding.
One thing we could do with but it's not an engineer, is a geophysicist, somebody who can understand some of the geophysical surveys that we get sent to check on. I do my best, but if anybody knows a Christian geophysicist.
Stephen, we have good news for you.
Oh, okay.
He was on, our latest member was on the call earlier, but he obviously had to leave because he's not here now. Malcolm Anderson has joined us.
Okay.
He's known to James Fowler-Williams. So
he's a geophysicist?
He is a geophysicist, and I'll send you an email and give you a bit more detail.
Because yeah, I mean, I think it'd be good to work together.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, because it's been stretching me quite a lot. I've learned quite a lot.
Well, we've been very grateful for what you've done. In fact, I rather suspect that the reason Malcolm has left the meeting is to go to a prayer meeting with James. So
okay,
we'll allow him to do that.
Okay, what's happened about Manawa? Is it
It sounds like Malcolm he certainly sounds as though he's gearing up to go and do the studies for us.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Good news.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Well, let him know I'm willing to help where I can.
Great, I'll do that.
Because I've got a lot of interest in that project, having been there and seen the people. And I mean, one of the things here, going back to what Rob said about multi-faith. We were in a meet. We went there and we met people in an open air sort of like a gazebo type thing. I can't explain what it. And there were Muslims and Christians there, and they were so grateful that we were showing an interest in looking at getting them better water. And they had like prayer. They prayed together. The Muslims and the Christians prayed together.
Wow.
And then even on top of that, they gave us all these vegetables and fruit to take away with us. And we didn't know what to do with it really, but we knew we couldn't say no. So it was really stirring, especially Muslims and Christians praying together. That was quite something I've never seen before. Sorry.
That's good. Okay. Well, I think if we have no more questions, then I will wrap it up. But I just thank Rob again for talking to us and doing so well and fielding questions, and everybody who's contributed to questions and answering questions. That makes the whole thing more interesting. So thank you very much, and I hope we can welcome you to the next one on the 20th of January, which will be more technical. I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again, that I was quite excited about tonight's meeting because it gives a wider audience a better appreciation of what CED is all about. And the more people that we have taken an interest and getting involved, the better. So, Rob, you might have apologized for not being a technical talk, but I think it's hugely valuable all the same.
Thank you.
But yes, our next talk is more technical. It's about the Clary Wash filtration system by Nigel, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. So I hope we can meet you all in the new year, and in the meantime, a very happy Christmas to everybody.
And you.
We can go and focus on that now. Okay, and I haven't said hello to you, Sandy, and I've not said hello to you, Billy Whiz, but hello and thanks for being with us tonight. Okay, good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.